Hi students, I am home and I will do my best to review some stuff with you. We're going to review what we did just before we left because you've had plenty of time to forget, and we need to just review it and refresh our memories about some stuff that we covered before we left for winter break and at the end of the semester, because we'll be using this stuff. These will be foundation pieces that we'll be using at least for probably 5 weeks, 6 weeks. So thought it would be best to review some of these foundation pieces because some of you were even absent and trying to learn it. Anyway, so you can get out your notes that we did before break, where we did the big concept map, where we started with the big idea as being matter, and matter was pure substances or mixtures, and pure substance could be an element or a compound, and mixtures could be homogeneous or heterogeneous. Remember that concept map? And I said don't lose this, you're going to need it. So you could get that out, and that would help you with your material that you're going to do today. Now you'll see two things attached to this Google Classroom post. One is for you to fill in some notes to remember, review and remember the material that we did. And then the other one is for you to do the practice and follow the directions and complete the practice piece. And I'll give you some tips on that practice piece as well. Okay? You're going to have to put your thinking caps on for the practice piece. The notes, I'm just going right over them, so if you can watch the video and fill in the notes at the same time, I would suggest that you do that. Alright, so a review of what an element is. An element is a pure substance containing only one kind of atom. And you will find them on the periodic table of elements. It's a table full of all the elements. So if it shows up on that periodic table of elements, then it's an element. So if you see the element symbol, which you'll notice that on your practice, if you see just a simple symbol like H, capital H, that's hydrogen. Hydrogen is an element with a symbol capital H. Okay? Carbon, capital C, it's an element. So look for those clues when you're completing the practice, all right? An element is always uniform all the way through. And an element cannot be separated into simpler materials, except for during nuclear reactions, but then that's a whole different conversation, okay? And there are over 100 existing elements, and they are found on the periodic table of elements. A review of compounds. Compounds are also a pure substance, but they have two or more kinds of elements bonded together. So H2O is a compound. It has hydrogen and oxygen, and it even has a subscript, the 2, indicating there are 2 hydrogen to 1 oxygen. So there's a chemical bond, H2O. And remember when we saw in your book, they showed the oxygen as a big circle, and then the 2, I want to say the oxygen was maybe a blue circle, and then the 2 hydrogen were red circles in your book, and they were overlapping, meaning they were bonded together. That'll be important to remember as well when you're completing the practice, what I just said. So you might want to back up and re-listen to that. All right. The atoms are chemically combined in some way, meaning that there's a bond. A compound is always uniform, so they're always homogeneous. And compounds cannot be separated by physical means. That bond has to be broken through a chemical change. Remember physical changes and chemical changes? You cannot take scissors and cut water molecules apart and make them hydrogen and oxygen. You have to run an electrical current through it to break that bond. So it's a chemical change that would change it. So you cannot physically separate a chemical compound. All right. And the properties of compounds are different from the properties of the elements that it contains. So sodium chloride, sodium is a soft metal, chlorine is a green toxic gas. Put them together, you get table salt, sodium chloride. It's a compound with a whole different set of properties. Mixtures. Mixtures are two or more elements or compounds that are not chemically combined. And we did examples of the types of mixtures. Mixtures that are uniform throughout are called homogeneous, and we talked about how solutions were always homogeneous. They were an example of a homogeneous, which is the same throughout. The prefix homo meaning same. And then mixtures that are not uniform, they are different throughout, are heterogeneous. And we talked about how a salad could be heterogeneous. We talked about Italian dressing. I guess I got stuck on the whole salad idea when we were talking about these. Italian dressing is a heterogeneous mixture. Okay. Mixtures can be separated into components physically or chemically. So if I don't say I have a salad and it's got radishes in it, and I don't like radishes, I could physically pick out the radishes and put them aside. Or I don't like tomatoes, so I could physically pull out the tomatoes. So I could just pick those out. You could filter things physically for a mixture. So those are the kind of the clues that you're going to be looking for in order to complete the activity. So on the activity, it says classify each of the following as elements. You'll just write a capital E if you think it's an element on the line in front of it. If you think it's a compound, you write a capital C. If you think it's a mixture, you'll write an M. And if you think it's neither, you'll write an X. There are some things that are not elements, compounds, or mixtures. Things like energy. Wink, wink. Energy is not an element. It is not a compound. It is not a mixture. It's energy. All right? Put your thinking caps on. Sorry.